let's hop in to the main segment tonight. What the F is WTC? That big boy is coming up here in a month. Now we did originally have plans to have the lovely Neil Kerr on tonight. There was a slight miscommunication in time zones, and Neil is a sleepy boy. It's like 3 a.m. his time right now.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's no miscommunication. It's like 6 hours. He's 6 hours ahead of us.
Yeah,
He's in,
so
you know.
yeah. So, but fortunately, I did get a lot of hot info, a lot of the latest details.
Itchy info.
Itchy info. Hot itchy info. And it is itchy because it came from Innes Wilson of Team Scotland. So
oh my.
He did hook me up with a lot of info. So WTC is a 8-person team event that's held. It changes location every year. It was formerly part of the ATC. Now it's on its own. Well, what are you shaking your finger about?
I'm pretty sure it's no longer moving around.
Oh, so it's in Belgium forever?
I believe. Well, for a while anyway. I'm pretty sure.
Nope. Said here on signals.
At least
that's law.
That was anyway. The last time I paid attention to this, I think that they were staying focused on one spot, but I don't know, which would make life a lot easier for them.
Yeah, yes, fair enough. Because then you don't have to try to like drag a tournament to a new country every year.
Yeah. So the WTC is like the Olympics of Warhammer, right? So like. Yeah. And the funny thing is when it was the ETC and they were part of that bigger jam, every time they would go someplace, it was literally like the Olympics. You know, you have to build all the stadiums, you have to like do all the infrastructure. Yeah, everyone would build it from the ground up. So each ETC, and I guess this will be the first WTC because of the pandemic.
This was the first. It's supposed to have been run a few times, but this is the first year it's firing.
Yes, exactly. So it's really, really wonderful. It's a long tradition, and you got some deep stats. So like it's country based. Obviously, everyone's sending their best 8.
Yep. Yeah. So it's based on nations. You're sending your best 8. Now we said we were going to compare to ATC. ATC is a 5-person team, so they both do pairings the same way for these team events. Which is if Val and I are opposing team captains, we would each simultaneously put down a defender. And then trade. So now I've got Val's defender, he has mine. And then we would look at that and we would both put down 2 attackers simultaneously and then hand that back to the other guy. And then you would look at, here's your defender that you had put down, the 2 attackers they put down, and you choose which matchup. Now, for a 5-person event like ATC, that's done twice. And then the last remaining team, our player on each team just gets paired into the other guy on the other team. It's kind of like, the last kid kicked to play dodgeball.
Or actually, there's a lot of times you're angling a certain army or player to be that sort of free agent wild card at the end there, because
that does force that pairing. You have no choice.
Exactly.
You put down if we're playing and I put down a defender, and you give me 2 attackers and one's a bad pairing and a good pairing, I have a choice about what I take. But that final, that leftover pairing, it's forced. You got no choice about it.
So what's the significance of having pairings on like the meta and makeup of teams and armies?
I'm going to try to dig deep here from my several team meetings this week, but it allows you to take some things that maybe aren't as good in the wider meta and take them in these cases and try to use them to their advantage. Now, for instance, I'm taking orcs. My team felt that they were pretty good into power armor, so I didn't have to worry because orcs kind of struggle into power armor now with Armor of Contempt, but I didn't have to worry so much about that because the rest of my team could do well into that, so I could focus on, other things that I wanted to take. You can do really skew lists if you want to. If you just want to be like, you know what? I'm going to bring knights and I'm going to cram 14 Chaos War Dogs into a list. And we're going to hope that we get a pairing where someone has like no anti-tank. And we're just like, here you go. Have 14 vehicles. Have fun. See what you can do with that.
Yep. I think interesting, like going between the 8 and the 5-team format. 8-person team format. The only place other than WTC that I know of that does it is Australia. Mm-hmm. They have the Anzac Team Championships. I think that's what it's called. At any rate, they'll do 8-person teams representing each state in Australia. And I think because when you have 8, by the way, each team can only take 1 of each faction.
Yep.
While each book,
when you get 8
go by book
on a team, you really start to scrape the bottom of the competitive barrel in a sense.
So and because there are so many more pairings, I think that also forces you even more. They'll skew even more, and they'll have very toolsy, specific circumstance lists built into the teams. When you're going 5, I feel like you're going to see more lists that aren't as heavily skewed. Maybe I'm
Yeah,
wrong.
more take all comers,
Yeah.
because there's some separation at the top between factions right now, but there's still, you can make a pretty good argument for 5 or 6 strong codexes right now at the top, so you could probably take most of those into account.
Yeah.
So ATC has 5, WTC has 10. They both have
LVTT,
multiple.
by the way, also has 5.
Yep.
Just throwing that in there,
Yep,
guys.
yep. And then tables are not the same. So a group, 2 teams have a set of tables, and there's variety of density of terrain. So there's usually heavy tables, medium tables, and light tables. So starting, there's a roll off to see which defender has terrain priority. So after we do that pairing, whichever defender has terrain priority, you pick which table you're fighting on. So Val and I are fighting. He brought all the shooty in the whole wide world. I brought all the close combat in the whole wide world, but I got the token to choose. I'm going to go choose a heavy table, and I'm going to just walk through ruins that he can't shoot through. So that's
And that,
another thing to consider. Like, what army? But if I take that, am I taking a heavy terrain table away from someone else on my team that might need it?
well, and that also is a really cool thing about that first defender choice, right? So like that first defender, maybe maybe you're going to put out not necessarily your weakest link, but maybe your weakest link. Maybe that's your first defender right away because they can give themselves as much of an advantage they can by the table they choose. So like the mini game, like the mini meta game of pairings, changes the whole thing, and then there's aggregate scoring in both of these.
Yes, and WTC and LVTT are running differential scoring, which is essentially it's how much you win by. So generally speaking, the easy math is every 5 points in a differential is 1 point in the score system. So sake of argument, if Val and I are playing and Val wins and he wins in a 20-0 fashion, he got about 40 more points that I did in terms of battle points. So, 80 to 40 or something like that, 90 to 50. So you might hear that talked about a lot where in a WCC and they're like, hey, it was supposed to be a 12-8, but I managed to get a few more points. So it was a 14-6. So they got a few more points for their team. Now, what ends up happening is at the end of the round, teams add up all those points. So all my players would add up the points they earned out of that scale of 20. All of Val's players would add up what they earned. And for WTC, if your team scores 75 points or less, your team loses the round. There is a little gray area, 75 to 85 points, where if you score that many points as a team, your team is tied. And then above 85 is a win. Now, I don't know, it hasn't been published yet if what LVTT is doing in terms of that. Yeah, win loss draw format, but they are going to be using some form of differential scoring. They might tweak that tie margin because that does tend to cause a lot of ties. Now, ATC this year not using differential scoring.
Hasn't for a long time.
It's just straight up how many battle points does your team get, and there is no margin anymore. So if we're playing in an ATC format and my team scores 250 points and Val's team scores 249, my team would win. So there is no margin, and I think this is the first year that ATC has removed the margin in an effort to cut down on the number of ties. They do have a lot of teams. They have like 65 teams at ATC.
Yep.
WTC is still a lot of players because they're eight person teams, but they're more close to like 25, 30 teams in most years.
Yeah, and also, I mean, the difference there being that like the guys who go to ETC often, they're especially in Europe, WTC. Sorry, old habits.
Yep, they die hard.
The guys, a lot of the metas in Europe and overseas revolve around WTC, the team selection. And maybe now with like the massive singles events that are showing up in the UK, proliferating there, maybe there's going to be less focus on team events. But for the most part, like this is like, for example, like in France, the best club team becomes the national team.
Yeah.
So there's lots of places where people are repping games in this format, and this is basically what 40K is to them.
Yeah, this is a lot of people's LVO.
Oh yeah,
this is their big end of the year, Super Bowl.
Yeah, and in a lot of ways, like this stretch to me has always been team season. So like,
summer's always about teams.
Yeah, WTC and NATC. Up here, we had we have the Canhammer team tournament.
Yep.
Now we have, like I mentioned, TGX. So like there's lots of great team opportunities. Down south, just below the border, there's Battle for Salvation. And I'm noticing more and more team events popping up
Yep.
all the time.
It's a fun way to play because even it's been said before, but it's worth saying again, if you're on a team of guys, if I'm at a singles event and I get shellacked round one, that might be the end of my run. That's it. I'm not going to win the event. But this team event, I get shellacked round one, but the other four guys on my team win. Our team wins and we move on. So you don't you have that thing to keep playing for. Even if you take a loss, you're playing for the other guys on your team, or if you're like, man, this is a bad matchup, I don't want to play this, but I gotta get some points. I gotta bring some points back to the table. So it gives you something to play for, even in those bad matchups that you may be before, or just like, what, screw it. Let's concede and let's go get a drink.
What would you say some of the pros and cons of, going with the 20-0 or 20-0 system versus, basically first one to win the majority of points wins type thing?
I think the pros on the differential system is it kind of helps if you want to do more skew or esoteric lists. You might build a list that's meant to lose small in that system, versus in a system that's just straight win loss. There's no point to lose small. We were talking about a pre-show. I'm like, I'm not super great on the pairings. I'm just you point me this week and you point me at a target and tell me to punch it. I'll do that. And it's like, I'm gonna try to win whatever game's in front of me. It doesn't matter why. I'm just gonna try to win. Versus a differential system does allow you to say, you know what? We're gonna build like a 180 boy list and just say, screw it. I'm not gonna win. I'm not gonna kill a bunch, but I'm not gonna lose by a lot either. I'm just gonna rack up a bunch of secondary and primary points, and you're probably gonna beat me, but I'm gonna still score decently well. So I like that. The flip side being, I think just straight battle points is easier for less competitive groups to approach. If you're not super into the team format and super into the list design and pairing process, and you just want to go with 5 buddies and drink and throw dice for a weekend, I think the non-differential system is a little better for that.
I think there was maybe an argument for this when we didn't have apps, because like even I would brain cramp. Obviously I would brain cramp doing the differential scoring up at the end. And it could also lead to errors too, and figuring out the differential. But if you're just punching in your battle, the battle points you got into something like Best Coast pairings or something like that, and it just crunches the number for you, is really neither here nor there. But it does provide, I think, a cooler, as Nurgle Matthew said, more granular way to score the games, because that every point counts thing is tremendous. I like one of my friends at the TGX event I was talking about on Cash Money Hammer, who were completely screwed out of third place. He was like 1-4, but he came out of that feeling like it was like easily the best tournament he'd ever played. And the reason for that is he was in ridiculous matchups. He was constantly just trapped under that bus. He was Keanu Reeves, dating myself again, dragging out behind, trying to disarm the bomb. And many times he took away enough points because that other team was expecting to get 20 points off of him. And if he grinds out, a draw or a near draw, that's devastating. And in the 20-0 system, you get those really cool turning point moments that I think adds tremendous dramatic tension and really tightens up that team. Like makes that team like feel like you're a band of brothers. Band of brothers. Maybe hopefully a couple sisters out there. Who cares? Awesome
band of
warriors, but it's awesome, and you're there with pals. It's great. So yeah.
So let's take a little bit deeper look at WTC. Let's get a little bit deeper. So I did ask Innes, hey, what teams are kind of the favorites? Who should be watching? Who should be the folks to keep your eye on when this stuff starts happening? If you want to know who to keep your eye on for ATC, I would suggest the Thursday show tomorrow. But for WTC, we got you covered today. The big dog he said to watch out for is Poland. Poland has been there for the last 13 years. They've taken first place 3 times. And in the last ETC that ran, which was 2019, they came in third.
So if they're not in first, they're podiuming. Like they have a crazy amount of hardware. Easily the most dismantled I have ever been playing 40K was against Team Poland.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous.
They are a very good group. The next one to watch out for is England, and this is another team that's been going for a long time, 12 years. They've taken first place twice, once in 2012, and then last time in 2019. So they are the reigning champs right now.
They brought it home.
You got to take them down.
That was with one of the coolest subplots, I think, in competitive 40K history. Nick Nadavati,
the mercenary,
Mercs, changes teams. He'd won with the USA the previous year, flips over to Team England. I don't like somehow. I thought it was awesome, and immediately crushes, wins back to back. I thought that was cool as heck.
Now there is another big dog to watch out for, and it's not Poland who's won the most. It's actually Germany. Germany has been there for the last 13 years as well. In total, 5 times taking the top spot. 5 times.
They had a ridiculously dominant run for a while, yeah.
Now, 2019 was not their strongest year. They came in at 9th place. But word is they've been rebuilding that team. They've got a stacked deck to keep an eye on over there. So they're slated to make a pretty good run.
If I recall, in 2019, they had some sort of a snafu with travel. I believe there was some form of a disaster where they like a
Did
couple
it have
players.
Anything to do with a passport that was misplaced, perhaps?
No, that one worked out. No, that was no problem. Although there are lots of misplaced passports involved in WTC. I'm not the only one.
I felt we could not do justice about discussing travel in WTC without a reference to the Heffel shoe.
Oh, yeah? Well, that's why, Seth. I only wear sandals now. Only wear sandals.
That's
now I'm out of focus. Great.
Master play. Sweden is the other team that I've been told is another powerhouse. Again, long-time attendee, 13 years. They did win it in 2018. They took 6th place in 2019, so a pretty good run there. They're looking to kind of get back on that podium. And then the last team is our beloved USA team here. Been going for about 9 years. They did win it, as Val said, in 2018. They did have a bit of a drop down on 2019 to 6th place, but that was unfortunately the year that we lost Jeff Robinson. So that team kind of had to rally with the loss of there's an amazing player and an amazing human being in the form of Jeff. And so 6th place was still a really respectable showing for them. I do know that this year is a bit of a stacked crew going for the U.S., but I don't know if how well those Art of War boys, I love them, how well they'll hold up to that stiff European competition.
Well, they they tend to hold up to stiff competition, I think I'll be really interested to see. The Team USA has reshuffled from their everyone's a playtester format that they were going to try and go into 2020 with. In the same year as an edition change. What a quinky dink.
Yeah.
But
it was
now that 9th has been really grooved, they could dispense with the insider trading. And that's great. I was all for Team USA with the inside baseball.
I knew it was going to happen.
It was fantastic. So it's really cool too, because I don't know, this is a sort of a rare moment in the cycle where there's kind of a more settled meta. Like a lot of kinks have been worked out in 9th edition. Most of the books are out.
Yeah.
It's been patched.
Balanced data slates, a new mission set.
It's kind of the coolest probably since 2018, like going into that year.
Dawn, I don't know that rosters have been locked and published yet. I think if I'm correct,
a month before.
Yeah.
So I don't know when it is.
Once lists are locked, which I believe is next week, they will also roster lock at that point with some alternates, obviously, in case people can't travel, et cetera, et cetera. And so you should be looking to WTC for that kind of information here in about a week. That being said, they also have introduced a new system since you've been there, Val.
Yeah, this is cool. Actually, I don't have the scoop on this, so I'd love you to walk me through it.
Yeah. So they have changed in past years. It's just been a Swiss paired tournament. which is how ATC and LVTT are doing things. But now WTC has introduced a pod system, and they have ranked pods. And I actually have a graphic for that.
Oh, shoot.
Um,
Sorry. I was like, oh, yes. Go on,
it's
Seth.
in the
Yes.
slideshow. It's in the
Yes.
slideshow.
Oh, this.
Yeah. So each of these groups, as you can see, like I said, Poland, Germany, Sweden, England, US, all teams to watch. Those happen to be the first seed in each of their pods. So they have, from my understanding, they have seeded pods based on kind of previous years'
Yeah, cool.
performances. And these pods are playing round robin style, which means for the first 3 rounds, your team will play every other team in that pod.
It's cool.
So you're going to play all of those, and then they come out of those first 3 rounds with a record, and then from that point forward, it's 4 more rounds of Swiss pairings. So I like this because it provides little intrigue. Because before they might put out the first round pairing in advance, but now once the list publish, if you're in Group 2, if you're Spain, you're Scotland, you're Norway, you've got the Germany's lists, and you're going to play Germany. You know who you're going to play everyone else in your pod. So you can sit there and really kind of, hammer out with your team. What are the pairings
cool. Yep.
You want to do? What lists, that gives you like almost a month to practice those games, to be like, hey man, Germany's got just this killer Necron list. What do we do about it? You can run it into every list on your team and see how that works out,
The thing that's crazy is that like the top teams are doing that with everyone at the event anyway. But which is wild. The preparation is wild for the WTC.
Yeah. They do a ton of
They
prep.
definitely earn their reputations as this is probably the most talented pool of 40K players that gather in one place, and that includes any other tournament that you can think of. But I think that's a really cool insight that you really do know, because like I'm looking at Canada here, kind of thinking maybe we can get out of the group phase, because it's obviously modeled off of the World Cup, and that's a lottery system. So like sometimes you get like big wigs in the same groups, and so like you kind of lose, like they knock each other out way too early in the event, or they beat each other up. Whereas here, because it's seeded, I think that's really, really clever and awesome.
Well, and interesting, because it's a round robin format, you are not guaranteed to have a certain number of like 4 or 3 and 1s coming, or 3 and 0s coming out of that. Like it's you can conceivably have everyone take an L in those first 3 rounds somehow.
Yeah, a lot of black eyes.
The field could be wide open, or you could have Poland and Germany just crush their groups, and everyone else takes an L, and then you've got those 2 undefeateds. But then after they get paired up, someone's got to lose, and then again the field's wide open. So I think it provides a lot of cool opportunities for redemption arcs, if you will. Like if you lose one early in the round robin setup, you're not done. You still got a chance. You just got to hang in there. So I like that. I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah. Now, I hope we don't see anything like the Olympics. Do you remember? I can't remember. I think it was the Beijing Olympics where there was teams disqualified in the badminton tournament for intentionally tanking games in their round robin component of the tournament.
Yeah. I mean, match fixing. Yeah.
Yes. There we go. Gravy Jones says Japan, China, and Korea did it. So hopefully we've got nothing like that. Sorry, no, he's asking if any Eastern teams are going, not saying that those are the ones in the Olympics that tank their matches. I don't know if we got any Eastern teams going. I know that they've been trying to get those groups off the ground, and they've been supporting them. I know the WTC is very supportive of trying to get other countries involved, but I don't know that they've got enough people off from those countries, because I think you have to have the majority of your team from that country. So
it used to be half. I don't know, that there might be a Nanavati rule I don't know about. But
and it's also not the cheapest thing to attend. Like this isn't like pop in a car and drive over.
For a lot of these teams, it sure is.
Some of the European teams, but if you're talking about like Eastern teams like Japan, China, Korea, or US and Canada, like that's a pretty significant amount of travel to get over to Belgium and play for a few days. And it is a 3-day event.
I would say that there's definitely a lot of interest to do that. I wouldn't be surprised if there's still a bit of a COVID thing going on there. So there's a lot more travel restrictions in
there's still
a lot of the Asian countries. So like that might be why you're not seeing them. Because I know for a fact, I know the people attempting to organize them, people trying to come out. I mean, in the past, there's been Argentina. Just overall, this group is definitely just looking at it. With the eye test is much smaller. There's normally I would say more countries coming from further afield than what's shown up here.
Yeah, I think this is like about 28 is what it looks like off the quick
I
map.
think if WTC had happened in 2020, I think they were pushing 40 teams.
Yeah, I could see it. So this is definitely going to be an interesting event to watch. But I think that about wraps it up for our team coverage. Are you ready to get into the ITC recap, Lord Val?
I am. I would like to just quickly plug something because
All right.
there was way back when we were doing Stat Center, the last WTC, we did an amazing. It was absolutely probably the best podcast I've ever edited together. It is a story of the 2019 ETC championships at that time. I might listen to it later tonight because I love it that much. If you guys want to hear some really cool stories, great interviews from and sound bites from Team USA, Team Australia, Team England. It was really, really cool, the stuff that we got to put together. So check it out.
I think the soundbite from do you have the soundbite in there from Adam Bromwitz giving the US team his speech right before the final round?
That was the cap. That was Cap, man. That was Sean Naden. Yeah.
Was it? Was it Sean?
Yeah.
I remember there was a great speech, and it's really worth listening
That's
to.
the cold open. The cold open is Sean Naden in the huddle with Team USA. It was Abramowitz who recorded it for us, who was coaching at the time.
Yeah. We really hope you enjoyed this show. Any final thoughts for the night, Val?
No, stop giving me the opportunity to derail this again. People want to go home.
It's my legal obligation to give you as many opportunities to derail the show as possible. Thank you so much. Have a great week, and we will see you next Wednesday.